video. So, Bailey Sweet, you wanna say hello?
Hi everyone, Bailey Sweet, parent of 2 who are in a public charter school.
Thanks for being here, Bailey. Dan Marcus.
Hello everyone. Excuse me. Hello everyone. Dan Marcus, teacher, John Stark Regional High School.
And you're new to the commission, right? You weren't here last meeting, so your first meeting.
That's correct. That's
Thank
correct.
you.
First meeting.
Thank you, Dan. And Dominic.
Hi everyone, Don Broderick, teacher at Lionheart Classical Academy.
Thank you, Dominic. And I think Chuck Douglas is on the phone, but I'm not sure. We know Eric if he's on, or Angela?
I'm not seeing him.
Okay, he hasn't shown yet, but he's trying to participate. All right, well, thank you very much. And because we have, just for it's our first meeting like this, since we have participation, we will have participation by those who are not able to be physically with us today. And we're gonna move on, have a motion on this later in a few minutes. We're gonna need to take roll calls to the extent we have any votes that we take today. That will include making sure that everybody who's online with us can actually can weigh in and record their participation. So with that, thank you all again for being here, your willingness to contribute to this worthwhile effort by the commission. Probably the first order of business, and before we move on to minutes, is to act on House Bill 308, which you received a copy of it with the materials. And
Anyone needs a copy?
this is a new legislation that allows a commission or a state board, and they fall under the rubric of a state board with the definition, that may allow one or more members to participate in a meeting remotely. And this provision also allows us to call a quorum, even though not a majority or a majority of the members and commissioners are physically present. And so, in order to bring ourselves underneath this new statute, we need a motion. It's kind of weird, the name is, we need a motion to adopt this, to adopt the provisions of RSA 308, HB 308, final version of it, which enables us to participate remotely in these meetings as well as attend virtually. So, is there a motion to bring us under this particular statute?
So moved.
Okay. Second. Okay.
The vote going.
Yeah. Any discussion? So we'll do, I'm not sure that we need a roll call vote for this particular one, we need to authorize this. So let's work with the assumption that we have, because we have a quorum of the commissioners present, therefore can act on a motion. Let's have the commissioners vote initially, and then we'll double up once we go through this particular vote. We'll do a vote that will include those participating remotely. I think just to make sure it's adults and suspenders approach. So we have a quorum. There's a motion on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously by those physically present at the meeting. Now I'd like to ask for those who are participating virtually, if they agree and approve this, are coming underneath the rubrics of House Bill 308 that's been enacted. And
I'm in favor.
yeah, thank you, Dan. Dominic?
I'm in favor.
Okay. And Bailey?
In favor.
So those who are physically present and those who are with us virtually all agree unanimously to this provision. That's the best we can do. Any other action we should take on this? Anyone else have any questions?
Maybe any questions about how it functions, if you want me to clarify that in any.
Anybody have any questions about this particular provision of the law that allows us to act both physically and remotely as a commission? With that, you were all presented a copy of the draft minutes of our meeting of September 13th.
We have copies here, so maybe it's in
Everybody need a copy? We need to take a roll call vote on this. motion, Phil, invite for someone to make, to approve, to adopt the minutes as drafted of the meeting of September 13th, 2023. So, Michael?
I'm not making a motion, but one correction, if I could.
Okay, sure.
I just happen to notice my name, it says state rep from Moffett.
Yeah.
And I do represent myself, but I also, I'm actually state rep from Loudon, so that's a small change, small correction.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, thank you.
note, respectfully, I believe the chairman's name is Mr. There's an E in Ovid.
Oh, there is, well, thank you for that.
And then, there's an A in
Okay. Thank you. Emily McDonald.
Hopefully you get these right next time. These are
Right.
easy fixes.
Right. Anyone else have anything they would like to, before we actually have the motion made, and, anyone else have any edits that they propose to these draft minutes? One thing that the law requires, now that we've brought ourselves in under, RSA, or House Bill 308 was adopted, is those who are participating virtually, do we still have Betsy with us? I don't see her.
You do, when her camera goes off, she is hidden, so that's.
Okay.
that's-
Betsy, could you bring your camera back up? Thank you. Bailey, rather. So we need to know, what the reason for your inability to be with us here in person. And it doesn't have to be very detailed, just, if you could just let us know, so we can put this in the minutes, the reason you can't be with us physically today. Is there?
And it could be something as simple as you have a work obligation, or a childcare obligation, or a scheduling conflict, or something like that.
I can start. Mine was childcare related.
Okay, thank you, Bailey.
Thank you.
I could say work obligation.
Thank you, Dan. Dominic?
And work obligation as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're gonna do that every meeting we have, I suspect, when people participate virtually, because that's what the law requires, so thank you all for that. All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes, the draft minutes as corrected, of the meeting of September 13th, 2023?
So moved.
Thank you, Rick. Second? Second, Ruth, thank you. Any discussion? We need to take a roll call on this, so why don't we start with, Eric, you wanna do the roll call?
Sure. Frank Edible,
Yes.
Tyler Cohen. Abstain. Helen DeBrule,
Elizabeth DeBoer?
sorry, Elizabeth DeBrule.
Yes.
David King,
Yes.
Blake Moffett,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Rick Ladd,
Yes.
Bill Gardner,
Yeah.
Gordon McDonald,
Yes.
Logan Valente,
Yes.
then online, Dan Marcus,
I wasn't here, so I'm gonna take no position.
Dominic Dubrovnik,
Yes.
and Bailey Sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you. So we got through that first procedural hurdle. I'd now like to ask Commissioner of Education, Frank Ellerby, to give further introductions.
Great, thank you, and thank you all for reconvening. Since our initial meeting, we have been working on this project in a variety of different ways, and so I kind of want to take a few minutes to bring you up to speed and introduce some guests who I have invited to the meeting today for presentation. I think that you all may recall that our original thinking around this project was that we would be contracting with somebody. The original thinking was that we would end up doing a request for proposal from an entity to be able to be responsive to the needs of the commission. In moving that process forward, it became apparent that an RFP may be difficult for a variety of reasons, including timing, in terms of the time period outlined in the legislation, as well as even just trying to find the right organization to do the work. The department has some existing relationships with vendors, and I've invited one of those vendors here to talk to us. And with the idea that we may consider a sole source contract that I would move forward to the governor and council. The organization that I'm talking about is Discovery Education, and so I will take this opportunity to let the Discovery team, there's 3 of them who have joined us today, introduce themselves, and then I will continue on some of the logic model behind where we are today. So Connie, you want to start?
Sure. Hello everyone, I'm Connie Reckner, Senior Vice President of Discovery Education. Kind of the grandmother of the group. I've been there 30 years and have seen it from the very beginning. We started as a small family company and over the years have innovated and have quite an impact and really enjoyed working in the state so far. So I'll turn it over to Lance and we have 2 people virtually as well.
Hi everyone, Lance Ruggi. I've been with Discovery Education since 2005. I'm our Senior Vice President of Curriculum Instruction and Student Engagement. I started my career as a middle school teacher in School District Philadelphia. But I've been with Discovery for many years in a variety of positions and I'm excited to share with you today. Amy?
And nice to meet you all. Amy Gensmer, Senior Director, Curriculum Instruction Team. And so I'm a former high school teacher. I know my wrinkles don't show that, but I also was a central office administrator at one of the largest districts in the state of Maryland before coming to Discovery Education 8 years ago. So I've worked a lot with coaching teachers, supporting teachers, and curriculum instruction, particularly at the district level.
And then we have online, Karen.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Karen Beer. I'm Senior Vice President of Partner Success at Discovery Education. I am rounding the back close to 40 years in the education world. I spent approximately 30 all in Pennsylvania. Ended my career as assistant superintendent, and then I've spent the last decade at Discover, and I work on implementation. Love the implementation that we have going on in New Hampshire. Look forward to talking with you more about that.
So thank you for those introductions. So, oh, is John on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's John. I didn't know John was joining us today. How are you, John?
Good. John Davidson, Regional Vice President of Education Partnerships. I spent about 15 years of my career in public education, and about the last almost 10 years with Discovery Education. I come to you from down the road a little bit, Litchfield, New Hampshire. My wife and family, fellow Granite Staters, and wish I was in the room with you today if I wasn't under the weather, but excited to be with you all here today. Thank you.
Yes, so he is a Litchfield dad, if I'm not mistaken. But some of my logic for wanting to bring Discovery to today and explain some of the reasons why I think this may be a path forward for us are, first of all, Discovery Education already has a statewide contract with the state of New Hampshire and with the Department of Education. The second reason is that Discovery Education is already used in 100% of New Hampshire public schools. I don't know if you realize what that means. I often say to people you could hand out gold bars and we wouldn't get every single school to necessarily adopt something, but we've got this platform is already in 100% of our schools. The reason I believe that Discovery Education is in 100% of schools, and you'll see that this morning I hope, is not only because of the content that they bring, but really because of the excellent professional development and teacher engagement that they have done in the state. So when we did the statewide contract with Discovery Education, they implemented a training and an orientation program for the educators, and so they went out to all of our schools, they got the teachers engaged, they showed them how to use the tool, they showed them how to use it in their classrooms, how to use it in their pedagogy. And that is really why they were so successful with that project, and I believe they can have the same type of success with this, and our goal is to make sure that we create something that, if Chuck was here, I'm channeling Chuck, that doesn't sit on a shelf but gets deployed. Another reason is when you try to roll out some type of a platform like this, there is a bit of, this is a little wonky, but there's a process called rostering. And what that means is when we go into the schools, what we need to do is we need to connect up the technology and the systems with the students. And so school districts already have a variety of systems that allow the students to log in and gain access, whether it's Google Classroom or a Canvas learning management system or some other type of system. And generally when you add another platform into that technology, we create what's called a single sign-on, so that the student on their school home page, for example today, can have a button that says, I want to log into Discovery. So they just click on Discovery, and because they're already in the learning system, it just connects them to that. We do the same thing with tutor.com. So for example, our schools that roster tutor.com, if a student wants to go to Tutor, they don't exit their school system and then log into tutor.com or into Discovery, they just access it through that same portal, and it makes it ubiquitously available to students and teachers alike. Discovery Education, I had initially noted, is a nationally recognized curriculum development company, and its own right can bring many resources to the table for this particular project. I was reminded this morning that they are not just a nationally recognized organization, but an internationally recognized organization, and I think of relative recent, they developed, for example, for the country of Egypt, a full curriculum for 250,000 educators in the country of Egypt. So deep resources in terms of curriculum development and understanding, how to both develop it, make it engaging, and make it accessible to our teachers and to our, to our students. Discovery Education has already had several conversations with the New Hampshire Historical Society and discussed how Moose on the Loose content can be integrated while simultaneously providing kind of dedicated channels for Moose. So in other words, we don't have to start, and whether it's Moose on the Loose, whether it's your materials, whether it's the We the People, they don't have to, everything doesn't have to be created. We can take content that we already have, we can bring it forward. I already have provided to them, Chuck, if you're listening, digitized copies of the 3-volume manual, the 30-year-old manuals that we discussed last time. So those have already been provided to Discovery Education. Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to comment on that at this point in time, or just wait till I keep going, or keep rolling. Okay. Yes. Okay. The Discovery Education platform really can support modern curriculum in the sense of being multimedia, engaging, workflow, a lot of different engagement types of opportunities for students and tools for teachers. And what we have been talking to Discovery about is that Discovery Education would provide a unique, so to think about like Discovery TV, like everybody understands it, right? So they have channels. And so they could create a New Hampshire Civics channel for us, right? And so we would have a channel for the work that we are doing that is accessible, in accordance with the legislation to everybody around that we need to get this to. And as well, in working with the Moose organization as well, they could also potentially offer a unique channel just for Moose on the Loose, which again may help it in terms of getting just that unique program directly available to a lot of the educators in the schools, although the New Hampshire Historical Society has done a great job already with that. So my objective in inviting Discovery here really is to provide, I wanted to share with you kind of my thought process for how I got here, right? As I have been figuring out, okay, what's the next step? How do we move forward? And I have shared with Discovery kind of what I see from our conversation, but I wanted them to come, share a bit about their perspective of the information I've given them, but really then to make this interactive and have the commission make sure that they convey to Discovery what their expectations are for this work, right? Because it's really your work, it's not the department's work, it is your work. You communicate to them what your expectations are relative to this work, so that then they can put a proposal together to be able to support the commission in that work, right? So I want to make sure that that's clear, that they're going to communicate some stuff to us, and hopefully it's useful and you get to understand what they're doing, but that this commission has to communicate effectively to them so that they can be responsive to us. I will ask, and in any work that we do, if we work with a vendor, it's going to be an ongoing communication process, right? This is not you're saying like, oh, we like Discovery, we do it, and then they go away and they come back and they give us something. We would have to structure the appropriate types of check-ins so that the commission is happy with the product throughout that process. But I would ask, as they're presenting, one of the things that I think is, I would ask as a consideration to keep the work moving. There's a couple of other gating steps in this process. One is, I ask Discovery for a request for, a proposal for doing this work. And I would ask at the end of this, I'm gonna probably ask the commission to authorize me to solicit and get a proposal from them, from a vendor. But then once we have a proposal, then we would also need to enter into a contract, right? And so if this commission is comfortable with this, I would ask that you both authorize the department to get a proposal, enter into a contract, and then bring a draft contract back so that you would look at the proposal and the contract and you would see like, okay, we're happy with what would happen here, and then this board would vote on whether or not we decide to move that contract forward. Once the board decides to do that, then I would take that contract and I would have to go to the governing council process and get that approved. And then we could begin the work at that point in time. And the other, I mean, it is possible you could just say I could take a proposal, I could bring the proposal back to the commission, and you could approve the proposal, and then I go do the contracting process. The only difficulty with that is we probably add about 60 days to the process, and so in terms of moving the work forward, if you're comfortable, I can bring both the proposal and the contract to the commission, and they can look at it and say like, yep, this reflects the work that we expect to be done to support the work of this commission. And so, with that, I want to introduce the team. I'm going to hand it over to.
Before we do that,
Yes.
may I ask just to pause and ask if any commissioners have any questions about what Frank has just presented as a foundation for how we're going to proceed today with our guest from Discovery.
Can I just make one comment? So he's absolutely right. We have been speaking with Discovery and the New Hampshire Historical Society is interested, but I wouldn't want anyone to get the impression that this is a done deal for us. We have a lot of intellectual property tied up in the Moose on the Loose. There's a long way to go. I'm interested in talking to them more. I'm interested in hearing what the commission says, but I don't want there to be any illusions about the fact that at this point, although the Moose has all the content on state history and state civics, it's hypothetical. So
Correct.
yeah.
100%, I appreciate that. I mean, and it is possible that you move forward with or without, like if the Moose says like, no, we don't want to share our intellectual property with the commission, then we can move forward without that.
Right.
Yeah, Maria?
So my question is, I'm familiar with Discovery Education wholeheartedly. We've had PDs with your people. We're supposed to be developing textbook. Is there going to be a hard copy textbook, or is this all going to be an online?
No, so we think, I mean, if you look at the actual statute, it requires a paper copy of a published textbook shall be available to each New Hampshire Civics classroom, and an interactive electronic version shall be made available on the department's website or other form available to New Hampshire citizens. So my anticipation is that we would have kind of an interactively, a much more modern engagement type of a platform, but that we would produce a downloadable PDF type of a document that would be less engaging potentially, right? That would be available to every single school to be able to access. So we would both meet our textbook requirement as well as creating a tool that teachers would use.
Correct. So
I think we have to have a both and.
Right. I agree with you. So from a technical perspective, my question is, the textbook you're saying can be a downloadable copy, does that satisfy the statute?
I believe that would satisfy the requirements of the statute.
But I don't think anything would prohibit us from actually, if we had the budget, to actually ask for physical textbooks to be printed from that.
Yeah.
PDF.
And the way the statute's written, it's one per classroom, right?
Exactly, it says-
For every student.
Yeah, so it basically says a paper copy of a published textbook shall be available to each New Hampshire Civics classroom. Now, it doesn't even mean that you have, I mean, that, and again, we have multiple classes, we got different
Right.
ages and grades and stuff like that, yeah. I think it's something else.
I got a question here.
Yeah.
In listening to Frank here, I'm looking at timeline.
Yeah.
You get a contract, come back to the commission, go to governing council. Have you projected out a timeline in terms of when we might be done the process with governor and council and then can get on? We only have about a year and a half to get this thing done.
Yeah. So we are trying to work on a timeline that actually would be, you know, hopefully we'd have something for September, if I can get it done. You know,
For next September.
correct.
When would we be done with governor and council?
Depends on the actions of this board, but I mean, you know, as soon as I get, you know, approval, then they're probably gonna need like 4 weeks or so for a proposal. It would take me 6 weeks to get it to governor and council, and then we would move that process forward.
Did someone who's online have something they want to say? Dominic?
Yeah. And then just to clarify from last meeting, there was discussion about doing standards like per grade level. Are we still talking about creating like a single textbook, or are we also talking about like a different textbook per grade level with the different standards?
Yeah, so I think that Discovery is going to address that, and you know, in terms of what they're going to propose. But again, this is what we want the feedback from the board. How do they want to try and go about doing this? And I don't want to steal some thunder, but they've modeled some ideas about how they might do it. And if you recall, because we tried to map this as well to the HB 216, which required a certain amount of instruction in the elementary school, and then more structured course in middle school, and a more structured course in the secondary. And so I think that's how they have envisioned some of this, but that's the kind of feedback that we need from the commission.
Anyone else who's online? Question, comment?
My question, and perhaps it's a comment, and it will be answered when Discovery presents, but I guess that's what I'm trying to understand, is will there be, whether it's primary sources or like a physical, is everything going to be on a screen? I noticed on the website they talk about textbooks, but I think what I would like to hear, and you can just tell me Discovery will tell us this, is what does it look like in the classroom for a child to read or engage with, so it's not 100% screen. That's the question.
So I think I think that may get responded to when Discovery presents, and but if you're, and if you don't get answered, Bailey, then certainly bring it up at the conclusion of their presentation, because really what I had set up was for them to present for probably about 20 minutes or so, and then just engage in a conversation and feedback to them. So.
Anyone else have any other questions, comments? Or are we ready to proceed to hear from folks from Discovery? I think we're ready to proceed, so thank you. And the floor is theirs, right?
Yes. Yes.
All right, let me just make sure. I'm seeing it on multiple screens. Can the folks online see it? John Davidson said yes. Lovely. Okay, this meeting is for you all, obviously, for us to listen. So at any point, please interject, ask questions. But in terms of structure and what we wanted to cover, we thought it would be helpful to just propose an agenda. So 4 parts. 1, we want to give an overview of Discovery Education and a quick glimpse into our work in New Hampshire, which the Commissioner talked about a bit already. And then second, we'll talk about our expertise and capabilities in digital, in a blended environment, in social studies in particular. And then we've given some thought to, we are here listening to ultimately take that and come back with a proposal, so we don't have a full-page proposal. But we've given a lot of ideas in terms of how this could look based on the legislation. So we thought we would talk about our partnership approach, and then ultimately really make sure that we open it up for vision from the commission, all questions big and granular, so that we can have as much information as needed to go back and respond. Does that work for everybody? Okay, perfect. So with that, I'll turn it to Connie to start just Discovery Education, our work globally, down to our work with New Hampshire.
Perfect. So just, kind of big picture, as I shared earlier, when I first started 30 years ago, we worked with VHS tapes and 16mm film strips. I'm sure a handful of us remember those. And now just really proud of our reach, globally and nationally. And to be, what I take from that is just our ability to listen and to curate content and to bring, solutions to the table. Our superpowers are really around student engagement and around support for educators. And so we have an incredible team of folks, not only here with you today, but back home in our headquarters that can help make this happen. And so what we've done not only nationally is over the last several years partnered with a number of different states. So there's 7 states, New Hampshire always being one of our favorites, to really look at what are the needs of the state, how do we take the content and the resources that Discovery has, and the expertise and our ability to partner, and really bring those curated tools to the classroom. And you'll hear from Karen in a bit, but some of the secret sauce is really our work in the field, arm in arm with educators, arm in arm with administrators, families, and how do we get everyone involved in that process to ensure you can scale these type of systemic changes? And the work that you're doing here today is incredible. We're honored to be here at the table. There's such a wealth of knowledge and experience around the table. And so to listen to you and to really create the recipe that we can scale is incredibly exciting. I mean, systemic change for the number of families and students that you can impact over the next several decades. So as Lance said, we're really here to understand what the needs of this committee are, take the lessons learned we have from other work, and how to bake, I guess, the perfect recipe that aligns with your vision and is scalable across the state. And Karen, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more specifically. The commissioner shared a lot of the high-level numbers about just the work that Karen's team has been doing in the field across the state to get that level of adoption. I know we surpassed over 1.2 million assets used and viewed. When you think of an asset, think of like those old VHS tapes, articles, encyclopedia articles. That's an incredible amount of content that your schools are using from Discovery Education. And Karen, if you want to speak a little bit more to the engagement pieces.
Yeah, sure. So as Commissioner was giving the overview, I thought, oh my gosh, he's looking at my notes because you shared so many of the really good components. We are really excited that, we have 100% of public school use. Schools who have joined in and they're using the different assets and resources to embed in their curriculum. And as Connie said, engagement is really one of our superpowers, and that's what teachers love, and that's why they love to use the resources. And speaking of those resources, we just hit 1.2 million interactions with Discovery Education resources in all different areas of the curriculum in the state of New Hampshire. You may even have seen a recent press release on that, because we're just so excited to see that usage grow. And again, I want to call out that one of the reasons that is happening is because of that ongoing professional learning that is really provided through the partnership. Whatever the district's needs are, however whatever their need for professional learning looks like, whatever their time allocation is, we can be there to help and support, and that has really been a major driver in the usage of the assets and the resources.
Excellent. So just high level, and then I promise we're going to jump in and show you some of the ideas. But Karen and Connie talked about it already. But ultimately, we create products. We create products for students, and we create products and supports for teachers. Like that is our audience. We work with administrators and principals and superintendents. But when we're designing and delivering, it is for students and teachers in classrooms. So kind of our pillars are, we have really great high quality digital content in a variety of forms. That's video, digital interactive, simulations, virtual labs, podcasts, you name it. There's like 75 to 100 different types of resources. We really put a big focus on professional learning because at the end of the day, the challenges that we've seen in the past couple of years, lack of substitutes, a lot of new teachers in the building, trying to get folks out for professional learning, we have to be really creative and intentional with that because we see the impact. For our districts that have professional learning, the usage is like 30% higher than those that don't. So professional learning, the corporate partnership piece, we have a lot of really just trusted partners that help us with content. Like 3M is one of those, the National Basketball Association. So we try and get content to really bring the real world to teachers and students, get them outside of the four walls of the classroom. And then community, which I saved last, because this is how I started at Discovery. I went from the classroom, brief stint at the Department of Ed in Pennsylvania, and then to Discovery to help start our teacher community. Our product, bless you, is literally driven by the feedback that we get from educators. And you'll see later in terms of process, that is something that's core to how we approach things, is that we want to talk to the elementary teachers in New Hampshire and the middle school teachers and the high school teachers to see, we all have needs in this room, but what are their needs, so that the last thing that we want to do is make something or partner with you to create something that doesn't get used. So community and the teachers and students that use our service is core to what we do. So with that, making teachers a little bit better through the use of the resources. Engagement of students is a driving factor, but making teachers better, embedding professional development and professional learning in our resources is something that we take a lot of pride in. So as I show and Amy shows just kind of some of the content, some of the ideas, I thought I would just start by modeling one. And I taught middle school, so if half of you grown, I'm used to it. But here's a little interactive activity for us. You don't have to get up, I promise. We have, like I said, community. We have this global community of teachers who basically share what they're doing with Discovery Education. In exchange, we elevate them. We have special events for them. And one of the things about 10 years ago now that came from our teacher community was, they would come to us and say, we love your video content, we love your interactives, we love all this digital content you provide us, but what do I do with it in my classroom with my 4th grader? Do I just play the video? What are some strategies? And out of our teacher community, they started sharing these just kind of one-off, really practical strategies with us. And 10 years ago, blogs were much more popular. We started just posting them on the Discovery blog. And then they became really, really popular, and the teachers said, can you make a video modeling that in a classroom? So we made a video modeling that. Then during the pandemic, they said, can you make a student-facing video modeling that? Because the kids aren't with us right now. So this is born out of, and I'm really proud of it, because our approach literally is listening to teachers. There's a series that really makes its way into all of our instructional lessons called the Spotlight on Strategies, and I thought I would share one with you today, and we're going to model it. This is one it's inspired by, if you're familiar, Dr. Robert Marzano. It really leans into the ability of mental imagery to help kids make connections and make sense. Let's see if the audio plays. I'm not sure. Are we hearing it online?
Was it bigger or smaller than the first dog? Where did you imagine that dog was? Was it inside a house? Outside in the yard? Was it standing or sitting? Why was it barking? Using a sound to form a picture in your mind, and then describing what you see can help make you a stronger writer. It's called descriptive writing. Putting two sounds together.
There we go. There's a little disconnect between mine and what we're hearing here, so hopefully folks online got the gist. So this is the simple example. This video we made so the teachers didn't have to describe it, they could share that with their class. But it's essentially, you play 2 audio effects or audio sound effects, and you have kids literally close their eyes and try and make connections based on what they see. And it's a great way, not just for creative writing, but to introduce a concept you're teaching, a social studies concept, you're teaching a science concept. It's a good 5-10 minute intro to the activity. So I thought we would try that. So if all of you could close your eyes and just listen, I'm going to play one at a time. All right. Good. Okay, you can open your eyes now. So, brave volunteer. You heard 2 sound effects.
If
What's
there's
this?
no volunteers, you can use the cards lance to call on people.
Oh.
It's a tool for
What's the
equitable-
question?
So
So the question is, you heard two sound effects. What story did you hear? What connection did you make in your mind that, like, visually, what were you seeing? What's the 1 or 2 or 3 sentence story that you can tell?
So Mike Moffat was mustering for revelry.
That's what I saw too.
That's very soon.
Anybody see anything different?
I think variation on that. I mean, I saw like a Civil War scene, a soldier running and a flag, and then maybe getting ready to start a battle.
Excellent, perfect. So it's just core to what we do is to try and find practical ways that, like, that simple strategy, I mean, for a teacher, it focuses the students engage with it. They're also getting to, like, be creative and tell their story. So when we think about what we design, like, core instructional strategies that are engaging are essential to what we do. So let me flip through here, playing the sounds again. So wanted to talk a little bit about our expertise and capabilities, and I'm gonna flip over to my colleague Amy to kind of talk through kind of our 3 pillars here.
So, kind of shared where we started from, but I would say there are 3 pillars at Discovery Education that we lean on with no matter what product and services we provide to districts. Engaging all students. I have a high schooler and a middle schooler myself. Maybe the high schooler is engaged and ready to learn every day. The middle schooler, not so much. So how do we make sure that we are really engaging students, we're understanding where they come from, how to hook them into the learning so that they want to learn, and that's where the real magic happens. The other piece, as Lance alluded to earlier, we have teachers that are in buildings that are new teachers. We have teachers in buildings that may be veteran teachers but haven't taught civics in grade 4 for a long time. So how do we support educators and give them what they need when they don't have a lot of planning time for instruction? So how can we make it easy for them to pick it up? And then I think the commissioner alluded to some of those digital pieces that are critical for the districts that we work in, and how do we make sure that we integrate those rostering systems so that we're not wasting precious instructional time to get students into the learning experiences. So I'll dive a little bit more into each of the 3, but that's kind of what we feel is really important for success, especially with this commission's work. So when we think about engaging students, great. What we know across the nation, and we also know for New Hampshire, we talked a little bit about that million assets. Students love interactives. That's our top used asset type. And when I say that word, it means a lot of different things. What that means is like games or simulations, opportunities for students to dive into the learning with some choice, kind of on their own, but it's really aligned to the teaching and learning goals. And we see that that type of digital content elevates itself. Now, I think there was a question about print and digital. Those are mostly digital resources. We're going to talk about how do we complement that with print and some of the examples Lance talks about to make it accessible. The other thing is we want student collaboration. I noticed this little article that's sitting in my face. I don't know if I'm supposed to see this, but the idea is that we want kids talking about these topics, right? They should not be thinking about these things on their own. We want them engaging in conversations. And so how can we build those types of lessons and learning experiences? Because we know it also helps students to talk out loud, to solidify their learning. And then some of the other tools that we're able to offer digitally, such as the immersive reader, allows our content to be translated in 70 languages. So all students are able to access those learning objectives that the commission is trying to achieve. So we have the students, and we have a lot of feedback. We get feedback from students and how things work. And we also get teacher feedback. And that's some of the things that Lance was talking about with that community. But we have already been engaging with New Hampshire educators. We will continue to engage with them. But what we have found over the years is that teachers need more and more support with kind of what is the expectation for learning, what should those strategies look like, why should I use them, how should I use them, how do I group my students. And so we provide all of those support for educators to make this really easy for them to pick up and use in their classroom tomorrow. Obviously, we want to make sure there's relevancy for teachers on, this is maybe something new that they'll be introduced to in the state of New Hampshire, but how do I make it, oh, it's not an additive thing, this is already what I should be teaching my students, and how do I make those connections to those standards and what I'm already supposed to be doing in the classroom? And then we have a lot of research-based practices, like Lance just showed with the, I make fun of Lance, he loves those strategies, and they are really good. But we were joking on which one he was gonna pick.
There was one that's for elementary and it's called Snowball Fight, and I was so planning to give you each paper because you write your thing and then you throw it, because I just wanted to see all of you have fun with the Snowball Fight. But Dr. Karen Beer hates that one, so we passed. Sorry.
And I also said no to that one, so,
It is a lot of fun.
yeah, it is a lot of fun. So one of the other things is we're gonna show you in a little bit, the question of primary source documents already came up on the question. So there are ways to expose students to primary source documents and have them interact with them. But helping teachers understand how to support students with that. And we do some partnerships with the National Archives and do some research-based practices on how do you break that down for students as primary source documents. And then lastly, that third pillar is the accessibility and the digital piece. So we know students are on social media, they're interacting with content all the time. We also know students make their own content. So we have a lot of digital tools at our disposal. One that students can get in there, they can view content, they can interact with content, they can make their own content in a secure setting, right? All of our content is vetted by subject matter experts. We're not bringing in other resources that maybe haven't gone through that level of review. And then we have all of the integrations with the districts that Frank was speaking to earlier, and it's very easy for teachers to push this content to students and also to be able to deliver, because some teachers have one computer in their classroom and some have students with all devices. So we try to think of all use cases when we design content, because there's not one classroom that's the same across all of New Hampshire. And so we're really considerate of that.
Excellent. I'm gonna exit out of this sharing and jump live to our site real quick to show you, as we were thinking about what this could look like, how we could help. Wanted to just show you some content live of what we kind of envision both at the elementary and the middle and high school level in terms of meeting the challenges, developing a New Hampshire specific civics program that ultimately kids like and the teachers like and it gets used. So let me just hit the reshare to Chrome. All right. Are we seeing that online? Mute my audio here. All right, so a little bit of a quick tour. I won't give you the whole sales pitch demo. Your teachers already have access to this in New Hampshire, but this is essentially when a teacher logs into Discovery Education. This is generally what it looks like. They can reconfigure their homepage, reorder it if they want. But one of the things that we've really been driving on for the past 5 years is personalization. Everybody, like, I go home and I watch Netflix, I watch Prime, I watch HBO Max, whatever it might be. It's recommending content to me based on past behavior. So for our teachers, we know what grade they teach, what subjects they teach. They can enter their interests if they want, and then we're trying to really serve them content to ultimately save them time. So this is the place that they come in. One of the key behaviors that they'll go and do is a search, and this is just to give you kind of a high level. When they do a search, we have thousands of resources, from videos to the interactives, kind of simulations that Amy talked about, to images, to primary source docs. So they'll come in here and they'll search for something that is relevant to what they're teaching. Now the big shift that we've seen on the instructional side in the past, specifically in the past 3 years, it existed prior, but it was exacerbated, was when our company started and the kind of innovation was, we're not delivering laser discs in a van to a classroom every week. You can get videos online that are segmented and you can watch 2 minutes of that video and not the whole 45-minute. Like, that was our big innovation. You fast forward 20 years, that content is still important, but YouTube exists. There's 1,000 sites that exist. That's not the novel piece. High quality, trusted content, still very important. But what we've seen, particularly for teachers, for all the reasons we talked about already, the new teacher shortage, is I don't have time and I need stuff packaged up. I don't have time to take 5 videos and stitch it together and make my own lesson. Like, the more that things can be bundled. So when we think about the civics program, I'm going to give you an example that is a Revolutionary War one that exists, that to give you kind of the look and feel and supports, not the topic. We know that we are here focused on building a New Hampshire specific civics program, but for illustrative purposes, this is something that we just started this year. We have 20 years of search history, so we use it in a very respectful way. We treat student and teacher privacy information very seriously, but we do look at patterns of what teachers are looking for in our service so that we can know, hey, in the month of December, well, I'll just ask, in the month of December, in an elementary classroom using Discovery in New Hampshire, anybody want to guess what a top search term might be? What would a teacher be looking for? Weather, keep going. When it snows at this time of year, or when we celebrate things,
Holiday.
holidays around the world dominates. Like, as much as we're like integers and civics, it's like at this time of the year, a lot of elementary teachers are looking for holiday content. So we know that search behavior, what they're looking for, and in the past year, we saw some gaps that we wanted to address in the elementary space around social studies topics. So we've developed a new lesson format for elementary specifically around, we're incubating this fall. We picked the 10 most popular topics and built out a new lesson format and custom built original video content. And when we think about how this would translate into an elementary classroom with the civics program, in the elementary space, it is mostly teacher presentation, package it up for me, I'm presenting whole class, then I'm gonna have the kids go into stations, I'll have them in small groups. It's also, to the question earlier, it's a blended environment. In the K2 space, we were seeing, really in 3.5.2, kind of a backlash to we're all online during the pandemic, so we're all on devices, and now we wanna get back and talk to kids again, and we're writing stuff in our notebooks again. So these are designed really to support that use case. But for us, the use case of, in an elementary classroom, we're giving the teacher the thing that they can present, that they can run with, and do, 20 minutes less planning on Sunday night is important to us. So I'll quit rambling and show you here. This is within the Discovery Education platform. Insert an elementary civics topic like citizenship or community. But for illustrative purposes, this is one around the American Revolution. So for the teacher, there are very specific and scripted teacher notes that, depending on where they're at, new teacher, new to teaching civics, they're there as a scaffold, veteran teacher, there for inspiration, right? So the design of our lessons ultimately is kind of a 3-phase model. One is that instructional hook, make a connection with the kid, prime some emotion or interest. And a lot of times you do that by making a personal connection to their daily life. And we tie that then to the topic at hand. So the instructional hook, we state the learning target. You can see here, depending on how the teacher wants to use this, notebook, whole group, assign it, it's flexible. But there's a lot of print resources, graphic organizers, and other kind of PDF resources that allow for kids to be doing something offline. So that instructional hook, I get my learning target, and then this is really kind of the sweet spot of what we're really known for from a content standpoint. We produced a whole new series that we would extend, obviously, to civics topics that we call the Need to Know series for social studies. I'm gonna play this, I don't know if I'll play audio because we might have this really big delay, but just to give you a sense of the visuals. So this is all original content that we created this past fall to support these elementary social studies lessons. This is also another one of those SOS strategies where you just have the kids tell you what they think the person
You have a
said.
question from Dan.
Oh, we have a question from Dan. Yeah.
I answered.
Oh, did you already answer? Okay, got it, yeah.
He said I have no audio, is that the question?
No.
Can the presentation slides be modified for teachers?
Yes. Yeah. So original content. Now the video content for us, and it's not, we don't always use video, we use interactives and other types. But the video content for these lessons is really to help kids build background knowledge about something that they've probably not learned about up until that point, particularly in the elementary space. And then what do I do with that information? How do I apply that knowledge? We have, and I'm not just pandering here, but we looked at Elizabeth's work with the Moose on the Loose and like your use of primary and secondary source resources. Like that's the approach that we're trying to take as well. You know, it supports kind of the C3 social studies framework. So within the teacher notes here, you'll see additional PDF activities, the standards, and in this case, we're referencing the C3 framework. But the point being, I have some background knowledge, what do I do with it now? Rather than just answering a few questions, we're taking them into primary and secondary sources, which of course there are an abundance of those in the great state of New Hampshire that we would leverage. And we're having the kids really, in this case, the activity is, it's called Meet the Artwork, where they learn about something in the video and now they're looking at a piece of art and really dissecting it. So that is kind of our structure at the elementary level. Then there's ultimately a wrap up and a connection. The thing that we've learned too, and this is like, that seems like a lot, that is most likely 2 class periods in an elementary setting. And I know it's only 13 slides, but the reality with little ones, and the probably unfortunate situation where in an elementary classroom, I'm teaching social studies 20 minutes twice a week maybe. And then in middle school it changes a bit. In high school obviously it's dedicated. So when we design and we think about the civics program that you all want to create, like I think that's where some of our expertise can come in as well, is like we know the realities of what's happening in classrooms and we're trying to build to accommodate that. So from an elementary standpoint, that's kind of the approach. I'll drive for you, Amy. Let's jump to middle and high school, and I promise we'll pause and see if there are questions.
Did you want to show that print page real quick? You had it up. So I think just to.
Thank you, yeah.
There are companion worksheets, right? So there are instructions to be able to be handed out to students that are in print format that go with that digital slide. So the teacher's delivering in front of the classroom and walking students through it, but there's still a print resource for students to be doing things on paper and facilitate those conversations. Obviously, grade 2 reading levels, dictate how the teacher's going to use that. But we are trying to, again, this is a good example of having kids talk about these topics as well before they write down their responses. So I just wanted to show this blended piece we've really leaned into. When I started Discovery 8 years ago, we were purely digital. And we've definitely seen in the past 8 years that we need to have a blended approach because people are leaning back into maybe these types of experiences. And we did a lot of interviews with elementary teachers a couple weeks ago, and this is what they're looking for. They've told us we want those graphic organizers so we can print them and provide them for students. So I'll put my high school hat on, or more my middle school, so that's why Lance lets me talk to the secondary content. We have a full civics book or program that we have offer at the national level at the middle school, right? So this is written for middle school students. And so we just kind of wanted to show.
And just to clarify, that's federal civics as opposed to New Hampshire civics.
Correct,
right?
correct. And so again, just like Lance said with the elementary, this is for display, like this is just giving you a look and feel of the type of content we have, not that this would be the content that would be for New Hampshire. So you can see our concepts, think of them like chapters of a book. If you want to look at the depth that we have here, we have units and we have chapters. And just like the pedagogical approach for the elementary, when we get into a chapter, we have to hook kids, right? Lance showed that engaging video at the beginning, how do you bring in that real world connection? And so we take the same approach in secondary. I find secondary students are probably less motivated in some ways than our elementary friends. But we engage them. So how do we build background knowledge, give them the connection to their real world? How do we motivate them to want to learn before we let them dive into kind of that explore on their own? So Lance is going to show you, if he clicks focus on Explore. This is just an example because it is more at the federal level. We have 13 pages. We would not offer 13 pages of text for New Hampshire for this particular project. We would definitely streamline this to New Hampshire standards, to the goals of the commission, but we have text, students have interactions with primary sources. Within the pages, there are checks for understanding. We have document-based investigations, so we know it's critical for students to be looking at multiple artifacts and doing some analysis and collaboration on those. And then those interactives that I referenced earlier, go to elaborate, we have those types of experiences. This one in particular, students can dive into the Declaration of Independence, they can zoom in, they can zoom out. We have accessibility tools built into this also. Let's say they can't read cursive. So we put it in text form, right? So students are able to still access that content. And again, this is, trying to build that agency. Students like to be able to have some choice in how they explore topics. And this content allows that to happen. So we have a breadth and depth on civics education holistically, but we're gonna get into topics, that's the request of this group in a little bit, and that's really what we're interested in understanding. There's specific topics that this group is interested for New Hampshire students to be exposed to.
Let me, thank you. Let me stop sharing. I'll share the slides again.
And I forgot to mention, the intent or our recommendation would be that we would develop slides similar to what Leon showed for elementary for your secondary, but we would be pulling out obviously a lot more of those text, longer pieces of text, other primary source documentation at the secondary level.
And so much of this is informed by what we're seeing everywhere with our teachers, but then just looking at, and John, Dave, and Karen, feel free to chime in. I know you work with this data much more closely, but when we look at what New Hampshire students are using via their teachers in many cases, the things that we showed you, the slideshows, are essentially lessons or activities. And then the interactives are the things like that interactive Declaration of Independence or a simulation. When we look at what the resources that students in New Hampshire are using and accessing, it's interactives and those ready-to-use activities and lessons. So that's informing our approach to this point.
These are discovery resources that they're using?
Yes. Yeah. Karen or John David, anything to add to this?
No, just that, just to follow up with, it's also what we hear when we're in the field, the ready-to-use types of activities. And, Dan, you had mentioned in the chat about, can you modify these types of presentations? Yes, they can be copied, and teachers can change and modify however they see fit, and they love that.
So one thing that we did, and please, we just have some really great designers, and this takes them very little time, so I asked a favor. This can look however we want it to look, and we're not supposing that anything, but just to visualize, a teacher goes into Discovery Education as they're doing now, and within there, they come to their homepage, they can search, but on that homepage, we can plop a very specific, very visible, whatever we want to call it, whatever you want to call it, New Hampshire Civics. Essentially, we call it a channel. It's a microsite. We can structure it however you want. It can be grade specific, grade banded, but just for illustration, we had them mock one up here. That this could be a place that houses all of the content. It could be a place that there are multiple pages within it to house other content beyond the Discovery created content. So that's how we see, trying to remove as many barriers for access by consolidating everything in a very streamlined place.
And I would add, Dominic asked the question about grade bands earlier, or is it one for everything? So what we have seen is we actually develop content kind of in the buckets. You see K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. One, because it's a different student at those grade bands, but also there's different reading levels. So accessibility of that content, and obviously the youngest learners are going to have more visual representation as part of that learning. So I know, Dominic, that question came up. I just wanted to address it here.
Yeah, and again, we're listening because we don't have a proposal in place, but the elementary space, as far as we read the kind of the legislation, the elementary space in K-5, there would be grade-specific lessons, New Hampshire Civics specific lessons at each of those individual grades. And then when you get to middle school, it's really, I think it states like the equivalent of a half of a year of instruction at middle school. So this is all up to you. It could be 7th grade, high school, it could be 10. So that's where, it's one of the many things that if we would work with you on this, we'll need guidance.
So, forgive me, great stuff. Our charge is very specific, and our charge is designed for New Hampshire students and teachers to help explore history, heritage, and principles of the New Hampshire Constitution and the government it established. It's not, what I'm hearing is a full gamut of civics. And I understand that you have this. Where is this?
So this is, I think, as he's kind of alluded to a couple times, this was an illustration, right? Just to
Right.
show kind of what they do. Their mission and the contract will be focused on our mission, right? Like they're focused specifically on that. I think that this is really just to give us a flavor for what that mission might look like when it's put into kind of this format. So I think we have to stay very close to mission, but I also don't want to lose the opportunity. These guys will be focused on our mission, but that mission can interconnect with a lot of other resources that
Absolutely.
educators are accessing now.
Absolutely, and I know that New Hampshire Historical Society has done great work with Moose on the Loose. I know we've done some things with
Yeah.
New Hampshire Kid Governor, all this other stuff. I wanna make sure that as we're exploring this, that we're clear on what our task is at hand, because the broader picture of all this other civic stuff has to be integrated, yes, but that should not.
But that's not our mission, right?
Right, and SB 216, we're a small piece of that, we're not SB 216, correct?
Correct. So I would say what I heard from the commission last time, and again, this is the whole point of this conversation, so this is good feedback for these guys. What I heard from the team is we're not part of 216. We have a very specific mission.
Right.
But knowing that the way that the legislature set up HB 216 in terms of, content available in that elementary lesson, half a credit going in the middle school and then the credit course in the high school class, that we want to make sure that our materials can integrate into that framework that we know the schools are going to be setting up. And so I think what Lance was saying, and I don't know if you have a slide that describes this, we had talked about this somewhat, but so I think in that elementary school we talked about, do you have that slide we talked about breaking down, in the elementary school, the civics piece, our mission stuff should be broken down into bite-sized lessons that teachers can kind of grab off the shelf and execute against, right? Not, something that is kind of much more, holistic in the sense of trying to teach all of history and civics and all of this kind of stuff, right? So, I think, I know we talked about, you have a slide you're gonna share with us? And again,
I'm
this
just
is
sharing it with
this is
myself right now.
spitballing. Okay.
Sorry, I've been looking at it and then I realized none of you are.
Yeah. So let's see if this helps put some frame around that. But again, this is the point of coming back. You're gonna read that contract, you're gonna look at it and you see are they focused on mission? Because if they're not, then we're not interested, right?
Yeah, and I think that was again, as we were thinking about that, what does it look like in an elementary space? It's maybe there's 3 weeks of instructions that equate to these lessons, but at the end of the day, if we would work with you on this, the easiest thing for us, and I'm not just saying this, would be for us collectively, we'll help as much as we can, but for you to give us a menu and say, these are the topics that we want. And then we'll go help facilitate, build, and assemble using our capabilities and content.
So essentially, I think the way that Lance had architected this, I don't know if you can share that, do a screen share or something, but in K2 is the logic, this is some of the conversation we have, but again, this is what we need your input on. But then we break it down and we do 8 separate civics lessons for the kindergarten teacher. We do 8 lessons for the first grade teacher, 8 lessons for the the K2 or the 2-year second grade teacher, right? That they would then, during that course of the year, would be able to grab those lessons and be able to integrate it into what is very understandably a math and science centric kind of a thing, right? And so can we structure a lesson that he can grab. It's a little bit like a moose on loose in that sense, right? Like, can you grab, you got 20 minutes, you got 30 minutes, can you grab a civics lesson and integrate it? And if we don't make it, I think this is the experience, and Elizabeth, if you want to comment on this, if we don't make it that kind of accessible, like if they got to ramp up, if there's any kind of barrier to getting to it, they just don't get to it, right? And we move on to we do something else. So we're trying to make it really digestible to move from in some cases students are getting none of this instruction to making sure that we make it so accessible that they're getting it kind of a steady diet of this stuff. That's what we're after. I'm sorry, I invoked your name. So. Yes.
I think we need to be careful as a committee that we don't make the mistake that so many people focus on education make of treating K through 12 as the same thing. Because the high school is really a different animal in every sense of the word. Those teachers are trained differently, they bring different things to the table, they are doing different things with their kids, and they approach it differently. So at the high school, I think this is a great option. I think, first of all, the high school is going to be focused overwhelmingly on federal civics. They're going to be talking some about state civics and state constitution, but really their focus at that level is national civics. High school teachers are much more inclined to want basically a resource bank that they can then build their own lessons on. You are correct. From K through 8, they don't have time for that. There's no incentive for them to teach social studies at K through 8. I mean, now there is, SB 216 gives a little bit for 7th and 8th grade teachers. But if you don't make it easy, they're not going to do it. And they need a lot of support for it. So I think that's the goal here, and I think the question is, well, I don't want to get too far into this. I know Mike had a comment to make, and I don't want to cut him off, but a lot of the content piece, and we probably should have scheduled time to look at the Moose, because the Moose really does fulfill that content piece, that core knowledge, abstract principles piece that we're trying to get into the schools. And I think we do it in a, as Lance said in one of our meetings, the Moose is kind of a soup to nuts curriculum, right? We walk people through this. Discovery Ed offers some really innovative and interesting instructional strategies for that K through 8 group that I think would be really helpful. So I see lots of opportunities for partnerships there at K through 8. At high school, I think this fits the bill perfectly. I think it really slides right into that slot and gives teachers what they need to teach. So yeah, I hesitate to have us treat it all as one block because they are just so different. And I think we really need to kind of separate those out and kind of look at them as the two different beasts that they are.
I also chair the House Veterans Committee, and I have to be at the VA in Manchester shortly, but I want the imagery of Washington crossing the Delaware, that's some holiday imagery that impacts me. My question for you real quick, while I can ask it, I know Moose has a lot of stuff great stuff out there. Now, I know you have a relationship with New Hampshire already, I heard. Is there any New Hampshire-centric videos or slideshows that you have already developed yet, or this is something that you may develop in the future if we develop a partnership?
Yeah, there's some that, the answer is both, but there is some New Hampshire-specific content, specifically in the social studies textbook. There's some in our experience platform, a handful of videos, but the specific lessons would be modeled after what we've shown in terms of structure and instructional approach, but we don't have New Hampshire-specific civics lessons in the service currently.
Okay.
Thanks, Over. I guess I disagree with some of the conversation we're having here, because I'm looking at HB 2, and I'm also looking at SB 216. And 216 is very specific. A course at either grades 5, 6, or 6, 7, and 8, a course in civics. That's a change, that's a twist. And now, pardon me?
It's a half
it
credit.
reads a half-year course.
Yes, it does.
So now we're also talking course has usually been grades 9 through 12. So many courses, every high school is required to have 43 different courses supporting 20 to 26 graduation credits. And you have a course in civics, a course of civics and government at the high school, granted. But now we're saying, and this is coming from the education committee, we're hearing that our kids are arriving at the middle school without the foundational skills in civics and government. And we need to be teaching the civics and government course that we should be teaching in middle school, but we're not. We're going back and teaching all about town meeting or how to get along with each other and how to be civil with each other. I'm looking for what says in HB2, where it says a textbook or related curriculum materials leading towards what was just said here, the Constitution and those areas relevant to the history of that. So I'm really looking for some guidance from this group right here. What is going to be our scope and sequence of developing skills in the elementary grades?
Well, so I think that's what we're trying to say, and maybe we put too much emphasis, and maybe my fault, in terms of trying to understand the platform, but I think that's the point, is that these guys are curriculum developers. They've showed us other curriculum that they have developed. The contract is going to be not for them to do stuff they've already done, but for them to develop the curriculum pursuant to the statute, pursuant to our specific requirement. And what we're trying to do, the thought process is, how do we package that so that it addresses the concern that you have that these kids are arriving in middle school and they have zero foundation, right? If there is no law that says you're required to have a half-year course in second grade on civics, and quite frankly, if we did that, it wouldn't happen anyways, right? So what we're trying to say is, how do we, in those, K-5, what resources do we bring to our K-5 educators so that those students are showing up in middle school with some of those foundational things in place so that they can then tackle a half-year course in civics, and that they would develop the curriculum for that half-year course, right? So there would be a channel that here's your half-year course for middle school kids, 5 through 8. And then there would be the high school classes. Here is your secondary class on civics. It has to be, and I agree with you, specific to what we have in the legislation, and not wander beyond that. I think we need to stay on track.
Right, but at the same token, not to confuse House Bill 2 and SB 216.
Yep.
Because in SB 216, there's a laundry list of
Correct. We
topics.
don't have all those, right?
Those topics that can be incorporated in the full year course or the half a credit course.
Those laundry lists are already in statute. And they came from Ohio. And we just, Alessandro and I just copied that out and we put it in the law. And so the way I'm looking at it, I know that Ohio's done a great job with the K through 5. So the scope and sequence has already been developed. All they do is borrow what leads right into our
Well, the
statute.
scope and sequence, we got moves on the loose, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know what I'm
it's already
saying?
moves on the
And
loose,
quite
right.
frankly, we have all of the material that Chuck has already provided to us with those books that we've already replicated. Those are very rich. So these guys are not, that's the whole point, like, we're not trying to start from zero. We're gonna take that information and move it forward, but we're gonna package it in, you're already packaged in modern, technology, but can we integrate it into the channel? We've got these books that we did 30 years ago that are not, those are not accessible to teachers, right? If you hand a teacher a hardcover book that's this thick and say, like, teach this, it's just not gonna happen. So can we take that content and put the content and modernize it in terms of its digitized presentation format? So I think we're saying the same things.
I'm not sure. I
Well,
guess
I may ask a question related to what you've asked, Maria, and that is it your intention that you would have Discovery Education develop the materials to meet the requirements of 216, and then have them also integrate the requirements of our purpose here, our charge?
No, I mean, so the content that they're gonna develop is relative to our HB2 requirement, but that content will be developed in a way that it integrates into the framework of 216, because that's how the schools are gonna have to run it anyways. So in other words, like, I'm not designing my HP2 content in a way that doesn't fit into the 216.
Yeah,
I'm trying to design it in a way so that it can seamlessly integrate into there, and then somebody's gonna have to add other content to that. but this content fits into that framework as opposed to, like for example, if we came along, we said like design a second grade half a year course in civics, that's, first of all, it's not part of 216, so I don't know, there's no requirement that they would do anything with it anyways, right? So we're trying to make sure that our framework, you know, integrates into there, but doesn't try to tackle all of the specifics of 216.
Right, so the only question that I had was there was a comment about a full year course, a half year course, meeting the requirements of 216. We're not saying that there's gonna be a full year course in the Constitution
Correct.
High School, bits in pieces, that's the
We're
clarity.
gonna provide the plug and play unit into that 216 course relative to our mission.
Right.
Is that a good way of describing it?
Yes, it is.
So this is not Greek to you, what we're talking about, so to speak?
No, I appreciate the clarity too. We knew showing examples outside of, like, we're really trying to show our capabilities and expertise, and then ultimately you tell us what you would want to do. So, yeah, while you were talking, I flipped to this because this was the perfect question. So thank you for doing it unprompted. Can we, I would love if we have maybe 5 more minutes just to, and we've kind of talked about it, but Amy put together a really nice just, we think about our approach. This is how, you know, this is how we would frame it. So Amy, why don't you talk to this one?
Yeah, and I think it speaks to
And Lance, I think
Yeah.
you're going to this, but Dan had some, Amy, I think you saw this, Dan had some questions in the chat about, you know, if we get the contract, exactly what you're going into now, like, what is the role for teachers? How do we identify the teachers? Who do we seek guidance from? So I think that's what you're going into now.
Perfect.
Yeah, I saw that, thanks Karen. So I think that's the key here is like, we haven't gone down this road yet because we wanna work with you. And we can't go too far and too fast ourselves because we need this collaboration with this group and we need to make sure that the topics and if there are specific pieces that this group feels like all New Hampshire students need to know at certain grades, we need to know that to be able to develop the content around that. So it's important that we already are tapped into New Hampshire educators, but we will continue to use them to get feedback from them on the approach at the different grades, as well as testing lessons, reviewing lessons. That is all part of how we develop content. We don't just have my curriculum team sitting, you know, somewhere and drafting these all up. We have teachers review these, we have teachers test them in their classroom before we launch them. Obviously, we talked a lot today about what we bring to the table as far as our expertise, but we definitely want to collaborate. I think the 2 last blocks are probably the most important for where we are in the conversation with content partners, and I know Lance and Elizabeth had some information, and Lance is going to talk about this a little bit, but this is about New Hampshire Constitution, like, they need to see the New Hampshire artifacts, right? We need we need help with content partners to bring that to life through the digital tools that we have available and kind of our best practices and research. For the commission's sake, this is kind of why we wanted to get a feel from this group today. What would you like to see for success? What are topics? What are your goal points? And then the idea that we would have various checkpoints, and I think the commissioner alluded to this earlier, we would establish kind of a clear process and workflow on how we're coming back to this group, getting that feedback along the way of the 1.5-year content development cycle. And then obviously, you are the key to getting this out to educators, right? That's the task. It's exciting work, like, that this group is doing, that you have the ability to reach all of these students at every grade, getting up to middle school and high school. So you're allowing that accessibility, especially if you deliver in the digital content, right, that we already know that teachers are accessing. So that's a critical piece of the collaboration to this all the work together. And then also, like, how are we implementing this across New Hampshire once that content is created so that teachers use it with students?
Just a point of reference here. Commission, we have the New Hampshire Civics. That's a separate 501c3 organization, New Hampshire Civics. This is the commission on New Hampshire spelled out civics, 2 different things. Just so you know.
I think that's why we had them in the 2 different blocks, so I have that incorrect.
The logo.
Oh, the logo, thank you.
Is that
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Still their logo, sorry about that.
Thank you.
I know the logo,
Thank you.
yes.
Yeah.
That's good, thank you.
This is great. I mean, to that, just again, to one final show and tell, and then let's open it up for more questions and next steps and however we can help. But Elizabeth, are you okay if I didn't even get a chance to share with you, but when we talked last week, again, not pandering as you get to know me more, even though I don't do that, but we looked at, like, the content's really strong. So Elizabeth and team sent us just one of the lessons, and we said, just send it to us and we'll, I gave one of our designers on our team like 2 hours, discoveryitize it. So that's when we look at, we have content, individual assets, we have our tech book, we can produce original content, but you also, as we've mentioned, there's partners that have all sorts of New Hampshire specific content we can leverage. So what that could look like.
So what he just showed you was ours.
Yeah.
That was our lesson plan, and now he's gonna show you what they did.
Thank you, as I struggle to find Chrome again. So that was the lesson plan, and this would be, that lesson plan kind of translated into our functionality, feature set, design, but same teacher notes, same setup and structure. Promise this is not published anywhere, it's just in our internal accounts. We ripped off your logo for purposes of this. But this is that lesson plan basically translated into a teacher-facing slideshow using the accompanying, graphic organizers and whatnot to help support a blended environment. But it's the same instructional hook, the primary source, or the secondary source artifacts that are used. So that's like, for us, the exciting part of this is like, you have a lot of great thought work and content. We can help bring it to life, bring it more to life, and make it even more accessible since teachers are coming into discovery education already. So, Elizabeth, hopefully that did your team's great work some justice. I said, do 5 or 6 slides, don't do the whole unit.
So, but whether it's Moose on the Loose or it's the 30-year-old textbooks that we have, like how do we take those and make those relevant? And then I'm just going to point out one last thing associated with, kind of moving down the discovery path. You were involved with the development of those previous textbooks, the 3 textbook series that Chuck has provided to the committee. Yeah. I mean, the difficulty with those is we produce them, but we don't know how well they got used or if they got used. If we go on a platform like this, we actually do get information, right? So that's why I know today that my teachers in New Hampshire have accessed Discovery 1.2 million times. I know the exercises that they go out and they grab and they're using. So I know, like, okay, so why is it that everybody is grabbing this type of thing? I know the schools that have never, well, everybody's used it somewhat, but like the schools that use it a lot versus the schools that are not using it. And maybe that's where we need to do some more professional development. So it allows us to do this work and not create an artifact that we don't know how extensive it gets deployed. So the work of this commission can actually live on in the sense that we can understand its impact well into the future and begin to tune up our responsiveness to how it gets engaged. So this may be another reason why I think it's a good idea that we are working with a platform like this. So,
Can you talk a little bit more about professional development? What are the costs to the individual school district, schools, or is it something you do through ESSA, or
No, so what I would imagine in this contract, I think a substantive amount of these funds will be used towards the rollout and the professional development.
Okay.
Yes.
I think, and so Karen, please chime in. There's the point of use, teacher supports. We have a lot of like micro learning 10-minute courses in the product that the teachers can use. And then Karen, I don't know if you want to speak to the more kind of strategic in-person blended approach.
Yeah, we have what we call a project manager in New Hampshire with who is overseeing the platform and the content there, and she goes from school to school. Actually, we have 2. They go from school to school, and again, however the schools need, whether it's an in-service day, whether it's a conference that they're doing, and they do the professional learning that is appropriate and relevant to that particular district. It's actually worked out really well.
And there's no cost to the school or the district?
Discovery pays for it?
Well, yeah.
Well, no,
through the contract.
No, but I mean, because what we're trying to do is, I mean, remember, we're trying to be holistic here. We're not trying to like just create content and then like, hey, good luck. We're really trying to implement it. And I think that the intention of the legislation is doing this is not, the textbook itself is not the goal. The goal is to make sure that these students are not arriving in middle school with no foundation, or they get to high school and they have no foundation. So we're trying to make the content impactful in the lives of students.
Does, this goes to penetration, you're talking about 100% coverage, I understand every district has a relationship with Discovery, how do teachers access this content? Do they need an individual login? Or how does that work?
So there's different ways you can do it. So when I say that we have 100% uses, we do have some districts that are a little bit reluctant to adopt Discovery, but we create teacher accounts so the teachers can access it, even if their school says like, well, we don't need it, but the teachers have access to it individually as well. So there's a both and. So you can do it as a, the complete roll up in terms of the whole district, or you can make it available to the districts as well.
Because I do think part of our charge is to create content that's available.
Ubiquitously. That's what it says in the statute. It says, I think it's
to all New Hampshire citizens.
There we go. Yes, exactly. My homeschool kid, my non-public school kids, like everybody's got to get access.
So we could do this.
That's what we're trying to do.
With Discovery.
Yes.
So a homeschool parent could get a login number and access the content that way.
Yeah, we can figure that out. We're doing it with the Discovery people now, so.
And
we do it with the tutor, with tutor.com now.
And I'm just curious, do you have any sense of penetration? How many of our students are on tablets exclusively? How many are in sort of this hybrid blended environment? How many are still on paper?
So nobody is exclusively, right? Like the pedagogy has not shifted exclusively. Like, so it's really kind of a blended environment. I think that we heard from one of our members, Bailey, today, in the little classes in particular, there are parents who don't want their kids on devices all day. So you have to have these kind of downloadable resources that the educator can work with, right? But at the same time, it's nice to be able to have the accessibility so that kid who is an EL, English language learner, or a kid with a disability needs to have a reader that does something for them. Or like they don't work well off of worksheets. So you can kind of have a both and type of an approach. And for the most part, our students are one-to-one across the state. So students have devices available to them.
But the content is agnostic as to the delivery method.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, right, so to your point, like, as I described, so a teacher could download that PowerPoint and say, like, well, I'm gonna modify this, right? And they're gonna edit some things in there. They have the ability to do that. Now, that would exist outside of the Discovery platform at that point in time, right? So, so we wouldn't have control over it, so we don't have individual teachers going in and editing the channel, but they can download the content and then customize it for what they're doing in terms of trying to integrate it into something else they're working on.
Just one other question for Discovery. In terms of the 9 through 12 content, are there simulation components in your products? Because I do, just my own experience, it's a valuable tool that we've used with students. Is that part of it?
Simulation means a lot of things to a lot of people, so can I ask you what you mean by simulation?
Sure, students engaging in role-playing in one of the branches of government. They're either legislators, they're the governing council, they're appearing before a court, something.
Some of the pieces that we were showing, we went very quickly, in the explaining where I was talking about document-based investigations, there are other forms of methods or how we engage students. Some of them being like that, some of them are they're creating newspaper articles, right? Some of it is role playing. So it kind of depends on the topic is. We usually give multiple options, right? Not just one way, depending on the makeup of the class. A teacher may feel more comfortable with those kind of scenarios in certain settings.
But that's the kind of input these guys need to hear. So we can say like, okay, note to self, make sure that we have simulations, and especially at the secondary level, right? Yeah.
Right. In the old days, we had textbooks. I wrote textbooks myself, but and the parents would like to know what you're doing in terms of the scope and sequence of teaching skills at certain grade levels. Is there, through the Discovery program, do you have a portal or availability for the parent to say, here's what's going on in school parents are saying, I can't help my kid, I don't have a textbook anymore, I don't know what to do. But does Discovery provide a parent resource or materials which parallel what's going on in the classroom?
Yeah, we've done it in a variety of ways. We have, not social studies specific for this example, we're going through two major adoptions from science, and parent portal is a requirement of those. So we've done it in a variety of ways. At the end of the day, students all have individual access too. So student can sit alongside parent, but I mean, we've done everything from parent letter to parent portal. Amy, I don't know if you want to add any detail, or Karen, if there's anything custom to the New Hampshire microsite already.
No, but I think talking about the microsite, so we have created, a microsite that is available to provide a lot of information. It can provide how to use resources. So there's a lot of different structures and features that we have to be able to put those components in place.
Presumably, if I'm mistaken here, the statute requires public accessibility to all of this, so the parents would have it, right? And perhaps
they would have it in that way, but they might have this big kahuna, and they may not know specifically to their kid. And the difficulty with the specific to the kid, and I don't know if it's if you guys have had to deal with this, but maybe with some other platforms. Right, again, if I do like the single sign-on through the student portal, right? I mean, that's how the parents are gaining access as well to that school system, as opposed to, we don't necessarily have a way to create usernames and passwords for every parent in the state, right? Their kid has access and they can access that system through their kid's login, but they're not accessing, we don't have something where we're creating a separate parental authentication, right? And so the parent forgets their password and they're calling me up, right, I don't know my password, can you log me back in? Like, that's all handled at the school district level.
And I can speak a little bit, so how teachers use our platform is, let's say they pick up one of those lessons that we showed, and they assign it to their students, that goes through whatever system the district is using, so Clever or Google Classroom, and there's a direct link. So as a parent, and I know this because I do this to my kids, especially the middle school I talked about earlier, I monitor him weekly, I go into his assignments for each class, and I can click on that, and I can actually see the content. So whether it's discovery or something else that they're assigning to the students as a parent, I can see that, and because of our integrations, it just goes right to their.
So you're
whole
entering in
system.
through your student's login, there's
I've-
school districts.
Yeah, the district is allowing me, and I can access it through the
So
student
that's what
login.
we need.
It would have to happen at each school district though,
Well,
because each authentication is different.
What's just been said is exactly what parents are asking for. They wanna know, how can I help, how can I work with my kid, how do I know what's going on?
I do wanna capture that though, because there are other things that
Okay.
we've done in other places, like create simple letters for the teacher to give out, right? If I know I'm gonna do these 4 lessons in civics this year, we have simple letters we create that they can put in their newsletters that they send out to parents to talk about the topic. So it's good that that's come up, it's like captured. There are
Our
other
parents
ways,
team
other
has done
things we can
professional
do.
development for parents, we have offered webinars and different things, so we can
We can do
support
other
that.
things as well.
That's a plan.
Does the educational platform, Discovery Education Platform, provide for assessment tools for students, for the teachers?
Yeah, so there are a variety, so within those slideshows, you can embed, I'm gonna filter myself so I don't go technical. You can embed multiple choice and true false questions and open-ended questions in there. We also have, and your teachers have access to it now through Discovery Education. There's an assessment builder, which is really more of the quick multiple choice, true false type test. But then we have things that are more elaborate in our textbooks. So the long-winded answer, short-winded answer is yes.
I think it would be helpful to understand, what we do see is at the elementary level, particularly with social studies and science as a topic. The emphasis on assessment or showing that student growth, maybe not as much obviously as the secondary level, so it'd be interesting in commission's take on expectations with assessment and measuring student learning, because what we've seen in science and social studies in elementary, we sometimes embed those assessments, they're using them whole group, they're not necessarily collecting individual student data at the elementary level, on these particular topics.
It gets into the thing we just talked about too, where at the end of the day, our districts, when they do the more formal quiz type they want it passed, the grades passed back through their LMS system, whether it's Canvas or Schoology, so we support that as well.
Well, what would be helpful to me anyways, and perhaps other members of the commission, is to know what it is that you think the students are learning from the units you've prepared. And the best way to know that is to know what the questions are on the test. I'm not suggesting we teach to the test, but I'm suggesting we reverse engineer the content that you are going to develop using the resources we provided, the Constitution itself. And then once the content has been defined and then you've implemented the pedagogy, at the end of the whole process, what is it that we expect the students will take away from that? And the best way to know that is to know what you're going to test them on. What are the questions? What are the exercises that are going to be proving points that, in fact, this curriculum, this approach has met the objective of the statute, which is have a much more educated, functionally educated student.
So it's not enough to just know they downloaded the lesson.
Correct.
We don't know if the kids actually, the learning got through.
That's right. And the assessment tool is, in my view, the best way to measure where we're going with this and what the ultimate outcome is going to be. And then when you look at the content as well as the pedagogy to see, does that really get there? You know, so it gives us a chance as sort of lay people to assess that.
We do have a bill coming up this session on just what you're saying over it. And the concern is, we hear that we have language arts and writing, we have reading and math and science at certain levels that are assessed by the state. Social studies has been relegated to the backseat of the car. And without it being assessed, it's oftentimes not taught. And that's our concern.
Which brings another point along that line, is that there are curriculum frameworks, I'm sure they still exist, for social studies, which might have as a component part New Hampshire Constitution and New Hampshire Civics, more particularly the Constitution. And we hope that whatever we would develop would in fact be taking into consideration those curriculum frameworks.
Absolutely.
We've already looked at that.
Oh, great. Excellent.
Because, again, we want the teacher to feel like this is not an additive.
Right.
This is already what you're supposed to be delivering and teaching.
And I'm going to say something, I don't know if this is getting out over my skis, I'm kind of curious as to what the commission's reaction to this is. I mean, this commission has as its objective to make sure that these kiddos are being inculcated with these principles. But I also don't want to short circuit the role of the educator who's there. Like, we're telling them this is your mission to make sure these kids get it, but then we have to let the teachers make sure that they're the ones teaching it and assessing it. Like, I don't want to, this commission shouldn't be like looking over everybody's shoulder and saying like, well, show us that you did or something. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a different role than we have tasked here. And I want to just be a little bit sensitive to
Well, that goes to Dan's question, which is really good at the very beginning. Can you tailor these for particular teachers and classrooms and schools in various parts of the state? And the answer you're giving us is yes.
Yeah.
That can be done.
Yeah, the teacher can download it.
So the pedagogy is wide open. It's just a matter of making sure that what's being taught.
The content isn't open, but the pedagogy is.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about it, Commissioner, I think just, I mean, this is down the line, but in terms of, there's an individual learning target as part of every lesson, which essentially is representative of a standard, or a part of a standard. And there could be multiple ways that we do research studies, you know, with select schools, select districts to really get at, and that was the slide of like, how do you know that this was successful?
I mean, if we know they're not downloading it, then that's a good start, right?
Indicator.
There's a lot of research to back up the idea though that the reason our writing and reading scores in this country are stagnant is because we are not teaching social studies, because kids do not have the cultural literacy and the contextual knowledge to be proficient readers. So the hope is when we start teaching social studies, and this is kind of the argument, right? That it's all integrated with ELA, with English language arts skills and competencies, because you're going to see those proficiency scores rise in the areas where we are testing in English language arts, because social studies is the glue that holds everything else together.
One of our
You're singing my song, Elizabeth. You're singing my song.
I did Karen and help with popping it up.
Yeah, one of our class, I mean.
I was wondering if I could,
Go ahead.
oh,
Go ahead.
No, please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
it's hard to know when to cut in on the, the online job. Can I make a few comments, is that okay?
Love it.
Okay, so, cause I got asked a question too, back in the chat, and I was gonna address that too. I would like to know a little bit more about the process, when you do your proposal. I would like to know a little bit more about the process for how you're going to bring in people that you're gonna consult with and sources that you're gonna use and all that kind of stuff. So just, you don't have to answer that now, but that would be something I'd be looking for. I did like the comment earlier, somebody was asking about simulations. And I think activities in general, I think that would fall under, related curriculum from the statute that we're working under. So I would like to see that. I think slideshows are great, but I think they have limited utility. So I'd be looking for that. Personally, I could make great use of annotated New Hampshire State Constitution. So if that's something that you think you might be able to make some thoughts about or have some thoughts about. And I'd also be interested in seeing, just in general, seeing sourcing for all this stuff that you put together, so we can see where it came from. That's what I want to say.
Is there anyone else who's virtual? I see that Martin Hundenberg has just joined us, or recently, as he appears on screen. You there, Marty? Okay, sorry. Okay. Anyone else who's participating virtually have any questions or comments? Here in the room, anyone else have any other questions or comments, or can we maybe ask for the commissioner to recommend a motion that we might vote on by roll call? What would you like us to do?
I'm happy to make a motion, and so the motion would be that the commission authorizes the department to solicit a proposal from Discovery Education in support of the work of the commission to enter into the contract negotiations and develop a draft contract for approval by the commission.
So both the proposal.
I'll second
You second that? So the idea is both a proposal and a draft contract will come back to us so we can compare one against the other and make sure we cover all
Because it
of
could be
this.
that they give me a proposal and I go like, sorry guys, we don't have that, we can't do that,
But we'll be reviewing both the proposal and the contract as a package.
Yes.
So there's a second to that. Questions, comments?
Support the motion. My question is, what is, under this framework, what is the role of the commission in content development? I mean, we didn't appropriately get into, content specifics about the history and heritage of the New Hampshire Constitution, but I do think it would be important to build into the proposal of the contract an opportunity for the commission to work with the vendor on those specific points. And I would also like to have the commission take a look at least some of the moose on the loose products.
Yeah. So I do think that there should be built into the contract check-ins, right? So as we develop content, and whether that is, we previewed like in kindergarten and first grade, we'll have 8 modules. Well, we preview those modules to, like, so how those are gonna get developed is going to be probably, and again, they haven't given me the proposal, but I assume working with, many of the New Hampshire teachers that we already work with in these areas, say like, what are the right content things, what should we have? We take Moose on the Loose, we take the content that we already have from Chuck, we take some of your content, we take all of these blended contents that we have, and we say like, okay, here are 8 essential units that we have distilled, and then that content would come to the commission, and you would actually be reviewing the content, saying like, yes, I think this is, so we've picked the right 8 topics, and we are comfortable with the content of those 8 topics before that moves on.
All right, but we would be reacting to what they have developed as opposed to at the front end getting our input.
Well, so I can tell you, we can build, this is why we're having this conversation, we can build in that these guys in their development, they could work with individual commission members on the front end to say, like, just like we're gonna work with educators, we can work with commission members, So Bill may wanna have a few things to say about what you think is essential for the Constitution, and these guys need to hear that when they develop that unit, right? Yeah. Okay, so then so we can absolutely do that. So just, you guys took note of that?
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm happy to show everyone the moose and walk everybody through it. I also want to encourage you, it is entirely open access. There are no passwords, no access codes. All you do is go to the website.
You just log in.
See,
Yeah.
no, you don't.
Don't even have to log in, right? You just go to the website.
Go to the website and you can see everything, even the answer keys. So don't tell the students that. But yeah, I'm happy to present the additional text.
You have an annotated New Hampshire Constitution.
I do not have an annotated New Hampshire Constitution,
Dan?
but I will tell you that we used Chuck's books when we already incorporated a lot of
that
Chuck's
into
books into the Moose on the Loose when we wrote it, and we used We the People.
Yeah.
Incorporated that as well, so.
We've also provided them with that too,
Right.
so.
We're supposed to be talking about the history of it, and when we talk in the legislature often with kids that are coming in, they don't know about New Hampshire's pioneer constitution of 1776, which was developed before the Constitution.
So, you know, this is the second time I've heard it called the Pioneer Constitution. That's not a phrase, you're talking about the Exeter Constitution.
Yes, but you know, there's certain books that are stating that as the pioneer constitution of New Hampshire.
Well, the Pine Tree Riot will be in this conference.
In fact, I have a copy of it right here.
Yeah.
To this day, that was written by a legislator several years back, and page 364, Pioneer Constitution, January 5, 1776.
Tyler?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a timeline related question, and if we're still talking content, I'll.
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor right now, so I think we just stay to the motion.
Okay. But you have a question on the timing for the motion?
Yeah, so, I'll pass to the group, one thing that the governor expressed to me is that, if at all possible, he would really like to see a product available in schools for the next school year, so that would be fall of 2024, so I guess my question is,
We're working it.
yeah, so if we get the proposal of the contract and we like it, that's pretty straightforward. If we wanted to make changes to one or both of those, what is the usual lead time on that?
Well, so you would get a proposal, and then this commission would accept that. They would either modify it and accept it, and then it takes me about 6 weeks to get it through the governing council process.
You might mention the governor, the statute says that the commission shall meet and shall publish the book on or before August 1st, 2025.
Yes.
And he signed the law.
He did, but if we can go faster.
Yes.
I like, can I go fast? We'll work on it, okay.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments, debate on the motion that's before us? And in light of that, no one else has anything else to say?
Dan, do you have your hand up, Dan? I see.
No, okay. So I'll ask Eric to conduct a roll call as required by the law.
All right, well, we'll start with you, Alden Valentine?
Yes.
All right, let's see, Frank Edelman?
Yes.
Okay, Tyler Kong?
Yes.
Elizabeth DeBroom?
Yes.
Dave King?
Yes.
Ruth Ward?
Yes.
Yes.
Lab? Maria Martinez Nation?
Yes.
Bill Gardner?
Yes.
Gordon McDonald?
Yes.
All right, and then online we have Dan Marcus,
Yes.
Martin Hohenberg,
Yes.
Dominic Dubravik,
Yes.
and Bailey Sweet.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries unanimously.
So it's unanimous based on the participants here today, physically and virtually as well. Wonderful. Well, thank you. And I think we're at the end of our meeting. I just want to thank the representatives of Discovery Educational for coming today, well prepared, interactive, and I'm looking very much forward to working with you all and your team. I think that obviously we want to move this as quickly as possible, and you have our commitment that we'll meet as often as we need to. We don't have a current meeting scheduled now for the next time. I think we're going to wait for indications from Frank as to when we have the proposal and draft contract to look at. But in the interim, if the commission members are interested, we could have a meeting focused on content. So before we actually see the proposal, we can have sort of an exercise, I think an hour and a half, 2 hours, to go through some of the loose high points, talk about, have Chuck hopefully participate, maybe highlight some of the things that he recalls from the work product, which is very interactive, by the way. If you've had a chance to look at those textbooks, there's quite a bit of activities that are built into it. And then have a robust conversation about what we really expect to see.
What I might do in that meeting is provide a framework. Maybe we can model it as, based on this feedback, maybe the model will shift, but like, okay, so what is important for, well, in that elementary, like, what are some of those early lessons, what do you want us to hit, you know, in that middle school thing, what are some important things that you want us to hit? Because I think that would be really relevant, for this team, and so I would expect that we could probably do something like that maybe in January.
Great. In January. Is there any other business to come before the commission? If not, we're just at 1 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting adjourned, and thank you, we wish you all a happy
Let the
holidays.
record stand that he adjourned right on that.
That's right.
Wow, yeah.